Mercenaries in Star Wars are an interesting cross between bounty hunters and pirates, and as such their starship needs are simultaneously very similar and very different. Let's take a look at 5 of my recommendations. I'm Joey from Radio Free Coruscant, and these are the best ships for mercenaries in Star Wars. New Class. First up is the Cygnus Spaceworks New Class Attack and Transport Shuttle. This workhorse of the Clone Army served the Republic very well in its time, and it stayed in use for a few years into the Imperial era. It should be very easy for a band of mercenaries to secure a New Class shuttle from Imperial surplus auctions, scrapyards, abandoned battlefields, or used ship lots. As for why they would want to, it was a very durable and reliable shuttle with great firepower, passenger, and cargo capacity. New Class shuttles were able to take several hits in combat without crashing, and when they did crash, they often left most of the passengers unharmed. It was also very useful for utility purposes, with a ventral magnetic clamp to carry small external cargo loads up to the size of a standard Republic escape pod. For more ambitious mercenaries, there was also a rarer extended version of the new called the Rho-class transport shuttle, which had both more internal space and the ability to carry significantly larger external cargo pods that could serve as storage, a passenger cabin, mobile barracks, and more. But for mercenary purposes, I think the greater maneuverability and smaller size of the new class would be a better fit. The new class measured 18.9 meters long by 24.3 meters wide and 12 meters tall. It had a top speed of 850 kilometers per hour and a Class 1 hyperdrive. The ship was fairly heavily armed with 2 fixed and 2 turret-mounted dual laser cannons. It required a crew of 2, 1 pilot and 1 gunner, and could carry up to 30 passengers. However, the entire capacity was rarely used, as the passengers would have been quite densely packed. Most of the time, news were seen hauling 5 to 10 much more comfortable passengers instead. It could also carry 2 tons of cargo and 1 week of consumables. All of that came at a very reasonable price of 85,000 credits new, or better yet, 50,000 used. Broadhorn. Next to nothing is known about this next ship, but what we do know about it suggests that it would make a great transport for a crew of mercenaries. The Corellian Engineering Corporation JT-731 Broadhorn transport was a very utilitarian ship even by CEC standards. They were commonly used as maintenance craft and garbage haulers, leading Imperial patrols to typically ignore Broadhorns. While plenty of mercenaries choose to align with the Empire, those that would prefer to avoid the attention of the authorities will find this ship's reputation to be quite useful. Agents of the Hidden Path helping Force-sensitive individuals escape the Empire used a couple of Broadhorns, and at least one was used by the Rebel Alliance to transport new recruits to Yavin Base. However, the real reason I think the Broadhorn would be good for mercenaries is its loading ramp and cargo bay. While most freighters have a fairly small ramp or even just a freight elevator, the ramp on the Broadhorn was large enough to allow it to carry small embarked craft and even deploy them in flight. This was a very rare ability for ships of this size, and would be a huge asset to a mercenary crew. It was at least large enough to fit something like a BD-680 emergency shuttle or 2 T-47 airspeeders, and could likely accommodate a small starfighter instead to give you some space combat capabilities. Additionally, the large size of the ramp and boarding area would also make deploying troops into battle very quick and easy. The stats of the Broadhorn have not yet been officially revealed, but by my estimation it measured about 46 meters long by 30 meters wide and 15 meters tall, including its enormous communications array. It probably had a top speed around 850 kilometers per hour and a Class 2 hyperdrive. It did not appear to be armed, though it could most likely be upgraded to include weapons like other CEC ships. I would assume it to have a crew of at least 2, and a passenger capacity of around 30, cargo capacity of 100 tons, and storage for 1 month of consumables. Its price is pretty hard to say for sure, but based on its fairly bare-bones design, I would say a cost of 100,000 credits new or 25,000 used would be reasonable. Gozanti. Of course, one of the best ships for mercenaries, like any category of person, would be the CEC Gozanti-class cruiser. This medium freighter was one of the most well-designed and versatile ships in the galaxy, and I cannot recommend it highly enough for literally any use. The Gozanti came in many variants, at least 8 by my count, but I think we're going to focus on the original civilian model for now. The Sea Rock version might be better given its improved speed and armaments, but I prefer the original. Plus, it was by far the most common variant of the ship, other than possibly the Imperial version, so both buying the ship itself and finding replacement parts for maintenance would be a lot cheaper. Regardless of which version you choose, the Gozanti was a very popular choice for cargo and passenger transport all across the galaxy, which means it would be great for carrying your crew, weapons, and equipment. Part of what made it so popular was that it was very heavily armored so that it was almost impenetrable to average pirate attacks. It was also decently well armed and very reasonably priced, making it perfect for virtually every organization and role. The Gozanti measured 63.8 meters long by about 25 meters wide and 14.7 meters tall. It had a top speed of 1,025 kilometers per hour and a Class 3 hyperdrive. It was supposedly armed with 4 laser cannons, a proton torpedo launcher, and 2 quad laser cannons, but only a single laser cannon is visible on the ship normally. The other weapons are said to be retractable, but considering the weapons list doesn't contain the one weapon we can literally see on the ship, I kind of have to conclude that it is simply incorrect. You could certainly add all that, or whatever you wanted to have instead, if it doesn't come with it stock though. It required a crew of 12 and could carry 12 passengers, 75 tons of cargo, and 1 month of consumables. In canon, it cost 200,000 credits, but in Legends it was only 150,000 credits new, or an absolute steal at 50,000 credits used. XS Stock Light Freighter. Normally, I stick to the Skywalker Saga era for these lists, but for mercenaries in the time of the Old Republic over 3,600 years ago, there would be no finer vessel than CEC's XS Stock Light Freighter. These large cargo ships were so revolutionary and advanced that they continued to influence CEC's freighter design for essentially the rest of the company's history. They were heavily armed and armored, very fast, and extremely comfortable for the crew aboard. All of these factors made them extremely popular with both smugglers and legal freight captains, and a troop of mercenaries would find an XS Stock Light Freighter to be a great asset as well. The XS was said to be 101 meters long by 88 meters wide and 27 meters tall, which I have always been highly skeptical of. It just doesn't have the level of detail you typically see on ships of that size, and all of its components would be comically large. The cockpit windows, for example, would be over 6 feet tall. Frankly, it looks like it was designed to be a bit bigger than the Millennium Falcon, but then somewhere along the line somebody decided that all the Old Republic player ships should be around the size of a Corvette or light frigate, and they just got scaled up without redesigning them. If you look at the cockpit windows from the inside and compare them to the height of a human, they seem to be more like 4 feet tall. Still huge, but they would give the ship a much more believable size to me, of 64 meters long by 56 wide and 17 tall. Let me know if you agree with my assessment. Anyway, despite its iconic and influential status, the rest of the stats of the XS seem to have been lost to the sands of time. It likely had a top atmospheric speed around 800 kilometers per hour and a Class 2 or 3 hyperdrive. It was armed with 2 dual laser cannons and a missile launcher. Despite its size, it had a minimum crew of just 1, but its recommended crew count is unknown. I would guess probably 5 to 10. Its passenger and cargo capacities are unknown as well, but probably somewhere around 10 passengers and 150 tons of cargo. Unfortunately, it's pretty much impossible to determine what it would have cost, but if it released during the Skywalker Saga era, it probably would have been something like 200,000 credits new or 90,000 used. Hammerhead Corvette. And finally, one of the best ships in the galaxy for mercenaries would be the CEC Rendili Stardriver Sphyrna-class C-80 Hammerhead Corvette. Very CEC heavy list today. This ship was inspired by centuries of CEC and Rendili capital ship designs, and proved to be remarkably popular itself. Despite being ostensibly a heavy freighter, it was far more common to see the Hammerhead in combat roles, and this blend of combat and transport capabilities is what would make it perfect for a large company of mercenaries. And despite being several decades old by the time of the Galactic Civil War, the ship was quite popular with the Rebel Alliance and went on to be one of the mainline warships of the New Republic for a time. These groups modified their Hammerheads with a couple of key upgrades that really breathed new life into the ship. An additional sublight engine was mounted to the top of the drive block just aft of the ship's turbolaser turret to improve its speed and handling. On top of that, 6 escape pods replaced its external cargo rack, and more prominently, 2 large weapons pods were affixed to its sides via the airlocks. This was a particularly brilliant upgrade, because using the airlocks to attach the weapons pods meant that both installation and maintenance would be trivially easy. If a pod got damaged, you could just swap it out with a new one as soon as you got back to base and get the ship back into service immediately while the pod stays behind for repairs. We don't know if these modifications were a bespoke upgrade package created by the Rebel Alliance or some kind of off-the-shelf aftermarket upgrade product, but given the sheer number of Hammerheads we see with this package, I would guess the latter. There is an entire industry revolving around third-party upgrade packages for CEC ships, so it's safe to assume that's what this is. And of course, I am telling you all this because I think any mercenary group worth their salt would want to upgrade their Hammerhead with this combat retrofit. The Hammerhead Corvette measured 116.7 meters long by about 51.5 meters wide and 40.5 meters tall with the upgrade installed. It had a top speed of 900 km per hour and a Class 3 hyperdrive. A stock Hammerhead was armed with 2 heavy laser cannons and a twin light turbolaser turret, and the combat retrofit adds an additional 4 twin light turbolaser turrets. It had a crew of 46, but could be operated by as few as just a single pilot for short periods of time. It could carry 125 passengers, giving you plenty of room for your soldiers of fortune. The ship could also carry 6 months of consumables and an absolutely incredible 22,833 tons of cargo. I assume that this figure only applies to a stock Hammerhead though, and that between the removal of the external cargo rack and the added mass of the extra engine and weapon modules, the combat retrofit would end up with a capacity closer to 5,000 tons or less. Still an enormous amount of weapons, munitions, speeder bikes, or whatever else a mercenary group would need though. The Hammerhead is by far the most expensive ship on this list at 1 million credits, plus however much the upgrade costs, but as the perfect combination of space combat and ground troop transport capability, it seems like an excellent deal to me. And those are 5 of the best ships for mercenaries in Star Wars. Let me know what you think of these ships, or what else you would have chosen, in the comments. Please like the video as well, and subscribe for more videos just like this. We recently hit the incredible milestone of 15,000 subscribers, so if you're not one of them already, I'd love it if you stuck around. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. RFC, out.